Hello everyone, TheHedgehogGamr here, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be reviewing a manga for the first time on the channel. Yeah, and of course, I forgot to mention that, I'm back recording on my old shitty laptop, but... yeah, we reviewed movies, albums on here before, but not any manga or anime kind of content. So yeah, what are we going to review? Today we're going to be reviewing and looking at... GYO. Now this is made by horror manga artist Junji Ito. Now, Junji Ito is one of those artists who is known for a lot of creepy shit and that. Yeah, you may know him for his iconic work, also known as Uzumaki, being his most famous one. And yeah, but this time we're going to be reviewing GYO. But yeah, anyways, there will be some some warnings for the channel and that. Yeah. Number one is that I might have to age restrict the video, because there will be some stuff in here that I might not show, because I think YouTube are going to be so sensitive about it. So I'm trying to use the censor thing if I can, but yeah, viewer discretion advised. And second, there will be some spoilers for both the manga and the OVA movie. And yes, I am of course, yeah, I think I said before, but anyway, let's begin. GYO starts off where we meet our two protagonists, Tadashi and Kari, where the two of them are on their honeymoon. Tadashi goes scuba diving only for a short time, till he gets out because of the sharks that were here. But Kari has a sensitive smell to the smell of fish when they went past the fish markets. Yeah. Till they got back to their house, they smell of something rotten, like the sort of a stench from a corpse, as a human corpse for that matter. They do begin to argue and all, till Kari goes outside due to it. And I think that actually really pulls it off for a film like that, or I should say a manga, because like with relationships like that you would always argue and such. But yeah. So Tadashi catches up with her till he finds her in the grass, where she screams as something moves very fast in the grass. So he takes her back to the house to go take a shower. Yeah, after she takes one, she asks Tadashi to go find the source of the smell. So outside, outside it doesn't smell like piles of bodies or whatever. Yeah, until, he goes back in the house to smell again while investigating. He finds his girlfriend passed out till he hears the sound of what appears as a spider walking. He goes to investigate till something from the grass walks fast, to hide behind a drawer, as he manages to crush it with the jaw. Interesting enough. When he goes to see what it was, it's revealed it was a fish with legs. How does it have legs? We'll find out very soon, later in this video. So later in the next chapter titled The Death Stench in the Air, Tadashi takes the fish with the legs to throw it out, until he goes back to check Kari. She seems to be fine, but still wants that smell gone. Tadashi gets a plastic bag to put the fish in, wrapping it around with duct tape and crushing it with a rock. He goes back to tell Kari that he got rid of the smell. However, she can still smell it, for some obvious reason, still. He goes back out to find that it's gone, till being interrupted from the screaming from Kari. He goes back to the help to see that he finds the bag all filled up with air from the stench. It pops a hole out of the bag, going straight towards Kari, causing her to flee the room. Tadashi manages to catch the bag to get stung from the legs, which are very sharp on the end of them, the point parts. Yeah. The bag catches up with Kari until she ducks down as it flies off into the air. Tadashi goes to investigate at the beach to see if it's really gone, until he sees a couple of more fish with legs coming ashore. From bulging odd ones and such, but yeah, it moves on to another chapter. So the next day he tells an officer about it, but he doesn't believe him. So we move on to a fishing boat, where fishermen have caught so many legged fish in one of those giant nets you would see on big fishing boats and such. They're all shocked to see how many of these. So they all run around attacking the fishermen, which probably killing them maybe, or infecting them, maybe. Yeah, which we'll get into very soon. Then it goes on to the beach where swimmers come out of the water because of a shark spawning. But if you thought the water wasn't safe, neither is the land. As soon as the shark jumped out of the water, he begins to attack and kill the swimmers. Back with Carrie and Tadashi, Carrie once again smells a stench, till Tadashi notices a legged shark out on their front yard, which leads to the next chapter, Shark Attack. So the shark is still on their porch while Tadashi explains to Carrie about it, but she screams to cause more trouble. Tadashi has to shut her up. In some seconds of silence, they hear something break in. So Tadashi goes to investigate that the shark has broken into the building, slams the door shut and tells Carrie to run out of the window to escape. But the shark breaks in as Carrie tries to escape from the window until swarms of fish are storming by. We see ones from a flathead, squids, a ray, and a nail. But she denies going out the window and runs upstairs instead. So Tadashi catches up with her while the shark follows them. And we see some parts with the thousands and thousands of swarms of fish going through Japan and throughout the streets. And we also see another shark, a hammerhead shark. Anyway, back to our two protagonists. The shark still follows Tadashi, but he manages to barricade the door with himself, like a human shield. Yeah, which the shark, of course, breaks down, which obviously it's not going to work. But yeah, Tadashi tries to attack the shark, but it runs towards them, crashing through the window, which is presumed dead. So they go back to Tokyo and see about the news that's talking about them. Mostly people are complaining about it due to the smell. There's deaths and injuries happening, and hunters going to kill them. Mostly going for the sharks and all, or any of the bigger fish. Back at home, Carrie freaks out again, and you guessed it, the smell. She begins to run out of the house screaming, till Tadashi catches up with her. But something appears from the sky, and that of course is the bag with the fish in it. Carrie runs from it, and again, Tadashi catches up with her till they hide in an alley. But the bag finds them, but it pokes a hole throughout it, causing the bag to pop. And dropping its rotten corpse in that. So Tadashi takes the fish back to his uncle. Oh yeah, didn't I mention his uncle Koyanagi? Which I hope I pronounced that right. He leaves it with his uncle while Tadashi and Carrie go home. While Koyanagi looks into the fish, it falls off, leaving its bones and stuff. Till he sees the legs with nothing but a ribcage-esque machine. He reaches out like to touch the thing or something, till it latches onto his arm, like a kind of bear trap thing. Yeah, he can't get it off, but he calls his assistant for help, which we'll get into sometime later, which leads us to the next chapter. Tadashi and Carrie watches the news about the fish crisis that has spread to the mainland of Japan. Tadashi gets a call from his uncle to come over, so they do anyway. Koyanagi explains that the whole legs that they were used during World War II. They would use dogs and sometimes cats as a weapon, where they'll shoot like stench smell from their mouth and anus. Weird, I know. But the animals would be paralyzed after that, so thus the machines were made. Till American bombers bomb the ships carrying them, which might be the cause of all this. Carrie doesn't feel good, so she goes to use the bathroom, but she checks in the mirror that she notices some boils on her face. How's this causing it? We'll find out very soon in this video. As she goes back out, another fish on legs comes to her. Or is it a fish? Because of this, she screams until Tadashi finds her that she passed out, till the creature emerges from the shadows that it's an arm. Yeah, rather than a fish. Koyanagi had to amputate his arm because of this. He tells Tadashi about the tubes, in which is causing the arm to bloat up. And then we see a type of blueprint of the legs on how it works. Tadashi gets worried that the germs might infect humans since they're in the arm. So he and Carrie decide to go back home. More news breaks out the unknown source where the legs came from. Tadashi notices the mark on his hand, which somehow didn't got infected. So he smells the stench again, but from Carrie's room. She begs Tadashi not to come in, but he does anyway. He begs her to come out, but she refuses, until being interrupted by something that he thinks it was a fish. Pulls the blanket off Carrie till he sees her fully bloated and that. She begs to look in the mirror, but Tadashi tells her not to. But she looks in the mirror because of how she looks. while Tadashi runs out to see more of the news that the fish have spread to the cancer area. Not to be confused with Pokemon. Now, how did Carrie got infected, you may ask? Well, I'm not really sure. Either maybe the fish from the bag, or probably something from the shark. Who knows? I'll have to try and look more into it in the manga. But anyway, which we get onto the 9th and 10th chapter, the Death Stench invades. In the swarms of fish, there's photographers taking pictures of the whole fish and all, yeah, enough said, until a shark bumps into them, until we see a whale emerge from the sea. However, due to its weight, the legs bend, leaving it beached. Yeah. Back with Tadashi and Carrie, she tries to kill herself, but Tadashi manages to stop her. He leaves her alone for a bit, as he remembered what his uncle told him, that they do get paralyzed or something. Can't really remember much, but yeah, that's all I can think of. It makes Tadashi worry more, so he tries to call his uncle, but he seems to be busy with his research. So he goes back to check on her, and we see that she actually hung herself, which I'm not going to show, because I know YouTube are going to be very sensitive about it. But due to how much weight she's gotten from being bloated, it snaps, and she's still alive. He tries to call an ambulance, not she, yeah, but no luck, so the only option for him is to walk there. As they're nearly at the hospital, they're stopped by another shark. They're chased down a dead end, and you might think it's the end for them both. Well, you're wrong. The shark gets closer, which nearly impales Tadashi with one of the legs. They manage to jump the shark, till they run into Koyanagi's house. So they climb the fence and get over there as the shark nearly devours them. Koyanagi and his assistant come out to see what Carrie has become. As Koyanagi is going to take Carrie to the hospital, Tadashi wants to come with him, but his uncle declines that, and to go check on his nephew's parents to see if they're fine. Tadashi goes through the whole stench to go for his parents, or to get to his parents, yeah. But is stopped by a squid, which drags him to a factory, I think it is, until the tentacle snaps, which he lands into a giant pile of fish. He can't get out, and it all hurts into the legs on these things. As he tries to get out, he collapses in the pile of fish as he lays there waiting for death. And then we go to the 11th chapter, Pale Carrie. As we see Japan going through so much hell with all the fish, we go back to Tadashi. He sees a glow within the gas and starts to see sees faces all around him, which could indicate that they're spirits of the dead from World War II. They drag him out of the storm drain until he sees a face of Carrie. He wakes up in the hospital as a nurse is relieved that he is alive. The nurse tells him that he's been in a coma for a month. Yeah, crazy, I know. He asks to see if the fish cross is over, but they're still out there, and everyone has gotten used to the smell. But not only that, the fish are now all over the world. Yeah, so pretty much from like America, Russia, any of the parts of the country, or any part in the world you live in, whatever. Which makes it a pandemic, as you want to say. Not to get into the, you know. Yeah. Tadashi wants to know if his girlfriend is here. The nurse doesn't know, so Tadashi goes down to the counter to ask if Carrie is here. But she's not, so he goes out to find her as he sees the military chasing and killing these things. He goes to his uncle's house and asks where's Carrie. Koyanagi says that she has died, due to the infection. Koyanagi tells him to rest here for now. As Tadashi is resting, Koyanagi's assistant, Yoshiyama, which I forgot to tell you what her name is, so there you know. She tells him the truth, that Carrie's still alive and is here. She takes him to go see her, and we see Carrie fully naked and strapped into the machine that Koyanagi has built. And that leads us to the next chapter, the Death Stench device. Yoshiyama tells him that Carrie has been in a coma since he brought her here a month ago, until Koyanagi comes in to see that his assistant had to show Tadashi where Carrie was. He explains that it is his walking machine and is used as a fuel source. This makes Tadashi pissed off, and that he goes to turn off the machine and bring Carrie to cure her. But Koyanagi warns him it's dangerous, and it causes Carrie to run into him, puncturing his stomach. She runs out of the window and is now up to Tadashi to go and find her. He goes through the city of Japan, as it's now a ghost town. While he tries to find her, we see a fish blow up due to how much gas pressure it's gotten, but he sees a human being in the distance as he goes to ask him to see if he saw Carrie, and the human being all bloated, just the same as Carrie looks. He tells him that he did saw her, and we see another human which appears to be on the spider legs, but it's not a machine, hand-built as Carrie's, sorry. Yeah, and it's not Carrie. And finally, we see lots of people on the spider legs, which brings us to the 13th chapter. As Tadashi witnesses this horror, he tries to save one of them, but the legs shoots off gas from the exhaust pipes and swims off by following hordes of them. Tadashi sees more legs abandoned, until he sees another bloated human which has some sick dance moves. He falls into the legs as the ribcage snaps in place, leaving him stuck. Then the pipes go into his mouth and up his ass, which can only, of course, go into any orifice. And then the bloated human scuttles off, and a dog scuttles by, and since dogs were used as a gas weapon in World War II, of course they would have to attach to the legs. Yeah. Because of how many fish rotted and explode, the legs will find a new host, either being a human or an animal. Tadashi wants to destroy them, so he throws a rock on it to crush it, but the rock gets clasped and shut. So he crushes it again and again, leaving it a destroyed mess. He continues to walk on until his foot gets clasped in the legs, sorry about that, acting it like a bear trap. He manages to break free from it and move on. Then he sees someone getting covered in the legs, till he hears gunshots, where we see the military shooting at the legs and its host. He begs for the soldier to stop, but he tells him to back off or he will shoot at him. Then another infected human begs for help and that the legs are coming, which there's piles of host on the big legs, which takes us to the pool of the death stench. Tadashi guesses it's from the shark, so the soldier shoots at it until he dies in the most brutal way from the legs. The gas takes a host for the legs, yeah, as it becomes another one. The gas tries to take Tadashi, but he manages to escape. He then hears circus music and follows to find the source. After that, he finds an actual circus, enough said. As he enters, we see a lot of the creatures from circus animals such as lions, monkeys, bears, and an elephant. He's welcomed by the ringmaster, who appears to be blind, but not infected. He introduces a lot of things from infected clowns and such, till his crew brings out one infected as it blows gas into the torch, creating demonic fire. Yeah, sorry about that for the pauses, I was trying to read the script and all. It burns Tadashi, but he survives by getting water on him. Yeah. The ringmaster brings out another attraction, which is Carrie. As the ringmaster's crew tries to force her out, the machine she's strapped in flungs shit at them. So not only it shoots gas, but feces. If this manga couldn't even get weird enough or disgusting enough. So there you go. Since of how much horror they got, Carrie flees off, Tadashi catches up with her and manages to stop it. He doesn't want to turn it on again, to not want to happen again. Yeah. So he just has to drag her back to Koyanagi's lab. He knocks to see if they're still here, but no answer, until Yoshiyama opens it with a devastated face. So Tadashi asks to see what's wrong, and what does it see in the next chapter? The death stench of Lab 2. Yoshiyama tells him that Koyanagi died from the stab wounds caused by Carrie. She wants to take him to a hospital, but he wants to be taken to his lab to die, just like how his father died in his own lab. Tadashi tells Yoshiyama to try and get Carrie out of the machine, despite losing consciousness and being paralyzed. Yoshiyama blames himself for helping to build a thing, but they go to the lab anyway to get her out. When Yoshiyama is about to take the tubes out of Kari's mouth, it seems they're attached to her, since she is decaying due to the infection. Tadashi has accepted to leave Kari to die in peace. Since how much she hated the smell, he wants to go cremate his uncle's body, but they hear a noise coming from Lab 2, so they go to investigate it. Tadashi guesses it's a fish, so he breaks into the lab due to it being sealed off. He sees nothing, only just darkness, when all of a sudden we see Koyanagi's body on another hand-built machine. The machine goes off and tries to attack Tadashi, but he manages to get out. But Koyanagi can, as we see his machine as a style of a blimp, as he sees Tadashi and Yoshiyama together and all. He begins to attack them by launching, which I don't think it's feces, since a tube wasn't in the anus, but the stomach, so I think it's like some guts, I would say. But as usual, we go on to the next chapter, the Death Stench Air Raid. Tadashi and Yoshiyama manages to get back inside to the lab, until Tadashi kind of snaps that she didn't tell him that he made another machine. Koyanagi breaks through the window to get them, but Yoshiyama tells him that her and Tadashi are not together. Tadashi tells her he's not himself anymore, as we see Kari looking at Tadashi and Yoshiyama holding each other for protection. We see Kari's final moments as she tears up and slips her arm out to activate the machine. She tries to attack Yoshiyama as she gets out of the lab, till Koyanagi snatches her up and flies away with her. As Kari flees from the lab, as Tadashi stops grieving for Yoshiyama, as he catches up to her, we see that she is surrounded by more death stenches, as they're called that according to a wiki source. But which they think her machine is a threat to them. We see like from pigs, a cow, humans, and some living fish that are still alive somehow. They all go to attack Kari, ripping out the tubes from her mouth. Tadashi tries to stop them, but is knocked back. Kari reaches out her arm for one last time for help as we go on to the final chapter in the series. As she tries to reach Tadashi's arm, she is pulled back to be killed. We see a city with hordes of stenches. Tadashi tries to find Kari, but he sees the cannon from the circus, which launches the corpse into Koyanagi's blimp machine. But it expands metallic wings. Small tongue. Twisted tongue. And he escapes with his presumed dead assistant. Tadashi sees a massive horde of death stenches marching on until they don't have anything to ride. He still has questions on who made the machines, until we have some researchers who show up out of nowhere, that they didn't even come by or whatever. They say that no one built them, but started in microscopic level, then growing more by Mother Nature. The researchers are trying to make a cure to save the human race. They're also immune to the stench, just like Tadashi. So that means there are more survivors out there. The researchers ask Tadashi if he wants to join, and he accepts it. As they walk, Tadashi finds Kari's burnt corpse from the death stenches that caused. He tells them to go on and we'll catch up later. He's glad that Kari is free from the smell, as he sits down next to her corpse while looking at the hordes marching on. And that's the end of GYO. But that's not all yet. It has some extra stories at the end, which I'm going to review them as short as I can. And the first one we're going to be starting off with is The Sad Tale of the Principal Post. The sad tale of the Principal Post begins with a family having supper until they hear their father screaming underneath the house. They see he's trapped underneath a pole and want to help him, but he doesn't want them to since the house might collapse, so he is left there to die. And so is the sad tale of the Principal Post. Yeah, very short, but yeah, that's how I can explain it. And now the final short story titled The Enigma of a Magara Fault. The story starts off with what an earthquake happened at the mountains, where we meet a protagonist named, which I'm probably going to butcher, Awaki. He meets a girl named Yoshida, who is also looking for the fault. When they get there, we see human-shaped holes in the wall. Researchers are trying to figure out how long the tunnels go, but no luck. Another guy comes by and sees he has his own hole, so he starts stripping and goes in there, being sucked in. Now the news starts talking about it and getting involved. Awaki has a nightmare that he is the guy in the hole. He's stuck there and he can't move. This really gives you so much claustrophobia for this short story. Like, if that were me, yeah, of course I would be freaking out, begging for help. Yeah. So, he wakes up and comes back out. We see a kid going in the hole, and a couple of more people start going in, because, like their holes are calling for them. Yoshida sees a hole identical to her, and she starts freaking out. So Awaki closes up it with rocks to calm her down. She stays in the tent with Awaki to feel more safe. But Awaki has another nightmare, where it takes us back to the prehistoric time, where he is being punished to go through the holes. As he is in there, his limbs and neck start to stretch longer, like making him some sort of ragdoll. He wakes up to see that Yoshida is gone. He goes to find her, but it's too late, as she took down the rocks and went into her hole. He sits there in sadness, grieving her, as his flashlight rolls down and points to another hole that is identical to him. He strips and goes in. Several months later, the researchers find the end of the holes that are not human-shaped, but looking like cracks. One of the researchers turns on their flashlight, till we see the most horrific thing to ever be made from Junji Ito himself, where we see a human being looking very twisted and distorted, and the story ends there. So that is GYO. Would I recommend this book? If you're into horror and trying to read Junji Ito for the first time, I suggest it. But if you're not into this gross out body horror, skip it if you want. But anyway, let's finish this review with its OVA film, GYO Tokyo Fish Attack. GYO Tokyo Fish Attack was directed by Takayuki Harao. I'm terribly sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. This movie, it plays very differently. Rather than Tadashi being the main protagonist, instead Kerry is the main one in this film. We are introduced to two new characters. We have Erica, who is a slut who wants sex, and Aki, Erica's punching bag. They go on vacation to celebrate their graduation until walking fish come along. Now, did this film success well? Not really. The film didn't success well with audiences on Rotten Tomatoes, with no critic score, but on IMDb, but one on IMDb. Now, there are some changes for this film that I will be discussing a lot, so sit back and watch. Kerry, who doesn't have a sensitive smell to stench from the fish, which has to come to one of my problems. Later in the film, we are introduced to two other guys who we don't even care about. Erica just wants them to bone her. Kerry goes back to Japan, or Tokyo for that matter, where we meet our second protagonist named Tsuyoshi, who wasn't in the original manga. We do get some turbulences on a plane, which we never kind of saw in the manga, and a train wreck, which was also not in the book. Now back with Aki and Erica, the two guys leave because Erica is sick, because in the film her foot was stabbed from the shark, and in the manga, Kerry's the one to be infected first, but in the OVA, it's Erica who is the first to be infected. This is what really gives me a lot of problems with the film. Aki has had enough of Erica's shit, so she kills her, quote unquote killed her with an ashtray, it looks like. As multiple fish watch, as Aki leaves, you do see a tear coming from Erica, just like the one in the manga where it came from Kerry. They go to Koyanagi's lab where they find a video talking about the death stenches used in World War II, blah blah blah. Then we see Tadashi passing out as the video ends, because he was infected. They try to go find him, but instead of Erica being in the machine, of course I can't believe I read that, Kerry in the machine, it's Tadashi. I think this might be the reason why this film went well. The entire infection spreads around, and all until we come back to Aki, who sees Erika doing the dance thing from the manga, and falls into the death stench. She chases Aki until we hit the storm drain part, where Aki falls instead of Tadashi. She begs for help, but is sucked into the pile of fish. And now, there were things that they got right in the manga. Of course, Koinagi getting wounded from the machine, the soldier dying in that horrific way, and the circus. Then in one part, Tadashi gets surrounded by the death stenches, but instead of seeing some animals and remaining fish, all we see are the humans. But when they begin to attack Tadashi, all we only see is a shark and a cow. Like in the manga, Carrie agrees with him as we see his machine, but not his skeletal corpse. We see that most parts of the world are infected, from Russia, New York, Europe, etc. But again, not much animals in the horde or still remaining fish. Oh yeah, we also see Aki and the two guys Erika boned, turned to the death stenches. Carrie is about to go on a little raft. He sees that Tsuyoshi has been infected from one of the death stenches, so she goes and leaves him to wait for death. As he is accepting his death, we see Koinagi in his machine with the metallic wings, but no Yoshiyama. Tsuyoshi just laughs. Anyway, Carrie's now on a ship with some survivors who are also immune to the smell, your infection, and that's pretty much the end of the film. So that is GYO Tokyo Fish Attack. Now if you're expecting it to be the same as the manga, don't be fooled by it. It's not terrible, it's not bad, it's not the worst movie to ever be made, but it's just pretty disappointing. It should have worked if they got things right from the book, and or be made as an anime miniseries rather than an OVA film. I'm gonna give GYO Tokyo Fish Attack a 5.3 out of 10.